Begin the current Daf, Mesechtes Kidushin Daf Yud Beis. We begin 10 lines down on the first of the wide lines, where the Gemara continues to explain the halacha of our Mishnah. Open up this parak, this Mesechta. Isha Niknas, the woman that gets acquired with three different ways. We said with Keser, Shtar, and Bia, and we explained all the three different ways of money, a document, and with cohabitation. And we had a machlokes in the Mishnah regarding the kingdom of Kesef. What's the minimum of Kesef? We discussed already the opinion of Shammai, why he says it's bedinner, a few different interpretations, and now the Gemara discusses the opinion of Basil, who said that it could be the lowest denomination of currency, it could be that of a pruta. Shir corresponds to Bakazach and the Cheskel turned to Daf Chaim. During today's daf, some discussing today's daf are pruta is a koldu, a minute amount, whatever it is going to be qualified as a pruta. But the Gemara is going to discuss kamahi pruta, how much is a pruta? Is there a certain number that a pruta has to be worth? The concept of shema shava pruta b'madai. The Gemara is going to discuss that generally we're always going to suspect that maybe a woman is engaged because even though over here it's worth less than a pruta, but maybe a madai, maybe somewhere over there this chachka is worth a pruta, and therefore we have to be suspect that it has value and therefore she's engaged. The concept of ikasadi be'idis, that well maybe there are witnesses somewhere else who know this, and therefore maybe it should have ramifications over here. Rav Mangid, the Gemara discussed regarding the Rav would do lashes for certain types of violations, some of them relating to the halacha of Kidushin. And the Gemara ends off with regarding if a woman is silent after she gets monies, do we presume if he's saying it should be for Kidushin purposes that she's going to be engaged because her silence is golden, that it's like kaidah, that she's admitting to the Kidushin that he's trying to do. To begin the current Daf Yud Beis, we begin on the first of the wide lines. Says the Gemara quotes in the Mishnah. They disagree with Beishamai. No, you don't have to have a minimum of a dinner, but pruta, a mere cup of pruta, the smallest monetary unit, suffices for Kidushin. So, some Rav Yosef Lemeimer. Rav Yosef thought to say that pruta is called dehu. What does that mean? So Rashi explains what does it mean called dehu. It means whatever by the generations the currency changes, sometimes less, sometimes more than its weight. Whatever it is, that's what the pruta is going to be in those days, the lowest denomination, and that's what you could use to mekadesh isha. On that, the Gemara asks, Amalei Abaye says, but v'alo katani. But on this, we learned in the Mishnah itself qualifies and explains, kamahi pruta, how much is a pruta? The Mishnah said, echad mishmayna be'isser talki. It's 1/8 of the Italian isser. So you see that it's not just whatever it is, whatever it fluctuates. The Mishnah clearly tells us how much value the pruta has to have. Says the Gemara, maybe you're going to say, no. Hanamili, when do we say that our Mishnah was qualifying? With B'derech Shel Moshe. In Moshe's generation, that's what it was worth. But over here, Rabbi Yosef is telling us, whatever it is that people would calculate it as, that's what it would be. If that's what you want to answer for Rabbi Yosef, but B'hoki Asur Rav Dimi Amor. Rav Dimi came along, he said the following teaching. He said, Shir Reb Simoi b'doirai. Reb Simoi evaluated in his generation kamahi pruta, meaning what does that mean? He evaluated. Rashi explains, meaning there was a story that came in front of him with a woman that got engaged with a pruta, and he required that its value should be for her to be engaged echad mishmayna be'isser italki, 1/8 of the Italian isser, and since it wasn't worth that amount, he said this wasn't a valid kedushin. When Ravin came along, he actually said, Reb Distoy Reb Yana Reb Oishya, they actually evaluated kama haba pruta, how much is the pruta? Actually, echad mishisha behitalki, 1/6 of the Italian isser, which Gemara later on is going to explain their machlokes. But one thing we see is that you can't just tell me pruta called to whatever it is, up and down, whatever it is, because you see that there's a machlokes regarding how much its minimum value is going to be. And that's what they were evaluating. Does this pruta have the 6th or the 8th of the isser or not? So Rabbi Yosef responded back to Abaye's question. He says, wait a second. If that's the case, like you're saying, that you cannot have a pruta less than, whether it be the 8th of the isser or the 6th of the isser, whatever it is. So he says, then I have a difficulty for you. Hainu de Tanina. How do you understand that what I learned in the Bryce and Teres Kayanim, which this Mishnah is taught regarding the halachas of someone having hanaf from hektish? The halacha is that you have to bring for the benefit of a pruta. If you just had hanaf from hektish, that of a pruta, you have to bring a korban asham b'kesef shkalim. So what the lesson the Bryce is trying to teach you is, go and calculate how far you have to stay away from an aveira. That even for a mistake, You have to have such a big kapara like this. What's this big kapara for pruta? This little tiny pruta's worth of hektish yadanah. The Brisa says, look, tzeva chashav, go ahead and calculate. Kama prutas b'shnei slam. How many prutas are in 2 slam? Meaning, you have to bring your carbon asham for having hana from hektish, which you took 1 pruta's worth of hana. You have to bring a carbon that's a asham that's kesef shkalim. Now, how many prutas are in these kesef shkalim in these 2 slam? There are yesim alpine, more than 2,000. So just stel sich vor, the Baal Musa gets up and he says, yeah, kleine hanu von a prita, 1,000, 2,000 mul, you have to pay for that. That's what the Bryce is trying to teach you. But says Rabbi Yosef, Abaya, I don't understand what you're saying. Hashta, if you're telling me that the pruta has to be worth an eighth of the Italian Isser, Alpayim, 2,000 prutas, loy havyan, in 2 slum, as the Gemara is going to shortly explain. Yes, Alpayim kaglu, and you're calling it more than 2,000? What are you talking about? There's not even 2,000. So Amalahu Hahu Saba. So there was this elder that said to Rabbi Yosef, you're making a mistake in this Mishnah. Meaning, Anot Taninala, you're right, it doesn't say Yesim Alpayim. It says Karav Alpayim. It said that it was close to 2,000. But it says Rabbi Yosef, okay, at the end of the day, Alpha v'chamesh meyo betlosin b'shita hudahavim. It's only 1,536. Because, and this is where Rashi explains how you get that number, because a sela is 4 dinar, and the dinner is 24 isagim, as the Gemara is going to explain later on. If the iser is always going to be, like they're trying to say, not like Rav Yosef, like they're trying to say it always has to be 8 prutais, comes out that you have 192 prutais in a dinner, and you have 8 dinarim that are in the 2 sloim, because, like we said, every sela is 4 dinarim. So you have the 8 dinarim in the 2 sloim, that each one is going to be 200 prutas minus 8, meaning it's going to be 192 prutas times 8. So because it said it's an eighth of that, so you have 1,536. So where do you get, based on your numbers, if you're making that the minimum of a pruta has to be an eighth of a sela, so then you're going to get to the number of prutais in these 2 slime are going to be only 1,536. So what are you saying? It's close to 2,000. This is the Gemara. Yeah, Kimin the nafkalahu. Since you already went out into the second 1,000 more than mipalga, because you're over the 500 mark by 36. So karev lapayim karelei. So that's called close to 2,000, and therefore it could be that it's an eighth of an isser. It's not difficult on those who hold that's an eighth of an isser, because that's called already karev lapayim, because you're already over 1,500 mark. We call it closer to 2,000. Okay, that was why it's not difficult on those who hold it's an eighth of an isser italki.
Great question, I think, is why are they always comparing or trying to peg the value of a pruta to a monetary versus something, a fixed thing like the value of an egg, 1,000 eggs? I mean, because that doesn't change from generation to generation.
Well, even eggs they claim did change.
No,
but
in general, much less.
It's a commodity.
Not much less than money.
Right. But currency always fluctuates. That's how currencies work.
How knowing that you're memorializing Torah generations, understand what the...
But Torah leben mit der Zaten. Torah guide, it depends on it fluctuates on the times of history, and it had different applications. You're right. The construct is always absolute. The dinner and the halachas will be the same, but it fluctuates based on what currency is. Yeah, but it's a good question. Why wouldn't they keep things in permanent? Yeah, this is it's yeah.
An Italian currency doesn't exist.
There's nothing permanent. So nothing that you compare to.
Yeah, it's a good question. Akapanim. This was what they said, that it has to have this amount of the isser, and therefore that's the question. Does it or does it fluctuate? That was the machlekes actually. So Gufa, the Gemara goes back now to discuss this teaching that we just had, this machlekes regarding, okay, let's say it has an absolute value, but we had a machlekes, like we said, Ki Asar Abdimi Amma, he said, Shir B'Simoy, they were just repeating what we said before to explain this. Shir B'Simoy B'Daire Kami Pruta. B'Simoy explained in his generation how much is the Pruta. He said, Echem Mishmayin B'Sataki, it's 1/8 of the Italian Isser. Chi Asar Ravan Amma, when he came along, he said, Shir B'Destev Rabbi Yan Rabbi Yishya, they evaluate and they say, no, Kami Pruta, how much is the Pruta? It's Echad Mishisha B'Isataki. That was this machlekes regarding, like we're saying, is it 1/8 or is it 1/6 of the Italian Isser? So Amalei Abaye Ravdimi. Abaye said to Ravdimi, who he was the one that said the first teaching. Nema, shall we say, that At v'Ravin, right? Ravin was the one who said the second teaching, that it's 1/6, and Ravdimi was the one who said it's 1/8. So we have this machlekes. How much is the pruta? Again, Rav Yosef wanted to say it fluctuates. They said no, it doesn't. It's always going to be based on the Italian Isser. Question is 1/8 or 1/6. But shall we say your machlekes is beplukta dahani tanoi kamiflegisu? You're disagreeing in the following machlekes tanoim, which is the Tanya learned the Brisa. Seemingly, your machlekes amaram is a machlekes tanoim, because we learned in the Brisa that says pruta shamechachamim, the pruta that the sages said, and here's where the picture would come, the graphic would come into detail, because the chacham are explaining how the breakdown of the currency is. So the chacham said, Echad mishmayna, the pruta shomachacham, the pruta that the sages said is echad mishmayna b'setalki. So that's like we had in the Mishnah. That would be how Rav Dimi had said that it's 1/8 of the Italian Isser. Now, what the Bryce is going to quote right now are different types of coins, one smaller than the next. So we're starting from the top, and we're going to go further down as we go along. So you have sheish ma kesef, you have 6 ma of kesef that are equal to 1 dinar. If you go further down, you have a ma that's equal to shnei pundayon, to 2 punyans. Then the pundayon is shnei isachen, is equal to 2 isser. An isser is equal to shnei musmisim. And masmas is shnei konterankin. And a kontrank is equal to shtei prutas, to 2 prutas. Nimtza comes out that pruta is achas mishmayne b'setalki. So if you see that the pruta would be coming out, if you're saying that a pruta is a half of a contract, so is 2 prutas are in the contract. So if you do the math, going back to the isser, as we described, because there's 2 prutas in the contract, there's 2 contracts in the masmas, and 2 of them in the isser. So that it comes out that it's going to be 1/8 of the Italian isser. He says a different calculation of numbers. He says shloisha, and you have to know the history of this, about what these coins were and why he's using different currency for different numbers. He says shloisha hadresin lema. So there's 3 hadresin in a ma. You have shnei heinetzin. Again, these are different types of coins. The history buffs will enjoy this about, archaeologists or whatever, what these coins are. But the shnei heinetzin lehadres, 2 of these heinetzin are in a hadres. Shnei shemanim, 2 shemanim are leheinetz, are in each heinetz. And base pruta is 2 prutas is in leshamin. Nimza comes out, pruta achas, 1 pruta is mishisha b'setalki, is 1/6 of the Italian isser. Why? Because the isser is 1/24 of a dinar, like we had said before, but the prutas are bigger than what you said, because, like we said, a dinar is 6 ma, and the ma are 3 hadresim. So it comes out that you have 18 hadresim for a dinar, which are 36 hinetzin, which are 72 shemenin, which are 144 prutas. So if you divide that into 24 portions, because regards to the isser, like we said that the isser is 1/24 of a dinar. So if you split up into 24 parts, so you're going to come out that you're going to have 6 in every part. So it comes out that you have 6 prutas for the isser, which is 1/24 of the dinar. So we have this machlekes between Shimon Gamliel and the Tanakama, again based on their understanding of the currency. How many prutas are in the Isser? Is it 1/6 or is it 1/8? But so therefore says says Abai Trabdimi Lema, shall we say the Ma Tanakama? You were saying like the Tanakama because you said the pruta is 1/8 of the Italian Isser. But Ravin the Amak and Ravin seems to be saying like Rishon Gamliel that it's 1/6 because as we're saying it's times 6 that gets you to 144. So it's 144 prutas in the dinner. So that's where seemingly you would be having the same machlekes. Amalei said to him, no, it's not true. Bein Didi, Bein Ravin, according to both of us, Aliba the Tanakama. We're both going like the Tanakama, which is really why we would say like that, because the Stam Masnitin of our Mishnah said it's 1/8. But like Kasha, it's not difficult. Because, so how do we have different numbers? How am I saying 1/8 and he's saying 1/60? We both go like Tanakama 1/8. Ha said, my interpretation is the Yakir Isure, is where the price of the price of Isser went up. Ha Ravan is the soil Isure, where the Isser went down. So the Gemara explains what this means. Ha the Yakir Isure, mine was talking about where the Isser went up. Kum Esrim ve'arba bezuzah. That is, and that's really the numbers we mentioned before. We said that 24 Isurim are worth this zuz, this dinner. Ha but his was talking about where the Isser went down. Kum tlasen v'trein bezuzah. You actually needed 32 Isurim to be worth one dinner. So Rashi explains what the Gemara is trying to do. This is on the first wide line. It says the opinion of Ravin was not that they added on to the prutais. It's just that the Isurim went down in price, meaning you needed more Isurim to get your dinner. So there were 32 that were in a dinner in his days, but it was always 192 prutais in a dinner. So if you calculate, because we're contrasting the pruta to the Isser, which is according to him 1/6, if you're going to count it 6 times, 32, because like we said, in his days you needed 32 Isurim to be in a dinner, comes out to the number of 192. Now, in the days of Reb Semai, the Isurim were worth more, which was therefore you only needed 24 Isurim to get a dinner. Comes out that the pruta, which is 192 to a dinner, was 1/8 of the Isser, simply because the Isser was higher value in his days. So what's the Gemara trying to accomplish? In contrast to Shimon Gamliel, he actually held that the pruta is 144th of a dinner, which means to say that there was a difference is in regards to the prutas. The Gemara was answering was no, we all agree that there's 192 prutas in a dinner. No one's holding like a Shimon Gamliel. Our machlek is not machlek is tanoim. We were just disagreeing because of when the Isser was higher or lower. That would be a ramification in contrasting to the Isser. But the prutas didn't change. We don't hold that there's any difference in regards to how many prutas are in a dinner. Like Gemara continues with the halacha of Beis Hillel. So again, that was just brought in because we brought it in because we were using it as a question on those who hold that the pruta is a set value of how much of the Isser it is, which we saw not like Rabbi Yosef. But then once we brought that in, we wanted to know how do we understand that contradiction at 1/8 or is it 1/6? And we thought it's a Malchikis Hanoim. We said no, it's not a Malchikis Hanoim. They could all hold like the Tanakama, that's 1/8, but just sometimes the Isser fluctuates, so it's going to be a difference in regards to the Isser, but no one disagrees regarding the prutais. They don't hold like Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, who held there was a different number of prutais in the dinner. Now, regarding the teaching of Beis Hillel Amar Shmuel, he says, Kitcha b'tmara. If let's say that someone does a Kidushin with a date, so even if you get a kur, like a huge amount of dates for just bedinner, which would generally mean to say that this date is not worth a pruta to be engaged, still Mekudash should be engaged. Why? Chashinan, we're concerned shemesh of a pruta b'madai. Maybe in madai, where, in other words, let's say somewhere you can't find dates. It's Yikara Metzius. So, oh wow, a date. Wow, I'll pay 50 cents for a date, So then it would be worth a pruta. So we're concerned that maybe it's worth that over there, and therefore we're going to say it has a value of a pruta, and therefore she's going to be engaged. Says the Gemara, really? Is that so? But now we learn the Mishnah that says, Beis Hillel oimrim, Beis Hillel say beprutu b'shava pruta, that the kedushin is only if it's worth a pruta or worth a pruta. So what's the Gemara's question? So Rashi explains: if you're going to tell me that everything, maybe if you went to Zimbabwe, it's going to be worth this plastic cup, a pruta, because over there they don't have anything to take the dirty water with and drink it, the polluted water. They're going to say, oh, cup, wow, they'll spend whatever they have from their grandmother that they inherited. So then what's the point of telling me that there's a value that Kidushin has to happen? There's no value. Everything you could say that maybe somewhere in the world is going to be worth something. So what's Beis Hillel saying? It has to have a minimum value of a pruta. So says the Gemara, yes, no, loikash, not difficult, because it depends for what. Habegedushe vadai. We were saying in our Mishnah that if we know for sure it's worth a value of a pruta in the place where they're doing Kidushin, that's definitive Kidushin. And therefore what? If someone else comes along and he says, oh, I wanted to marry this woman, and he gives her a ring. No, she's permitted to the first one. She doesn't need to get from the second one. But Habegedushe Safik, this teaching that we quoted from Shmuel was talking about if it's not worth a Shava Pruta over here, you're right, it's not going to be definite Kedushin, and therefore it's not going to nullify the second one's Kedushin, but it's going to be Kedushin Safik. She's not going to be permitted to anyone else unless she gets a get, because we are concerned that maybe it's worth a Pruta in Madai. But the shiur is effective to let us know what's considered full-fledged Kedushin. Once she gets a Kedushin with a Pruta in where it is, then there's no more doubt anymore. We're not going to say that maybe she's engaged to a second person, but you're right, we are going to be misupik, even if something is worth less, because maybe it's worth more somewhere else. Gemara brings a story. Who Gavra, there was a certain person, the Akdish Bezavde de Urde, that he got engaged with a bundle of rags. So Yosef Rav Simi Bar Chia Kamed Rav. So Rav Simi Bar Chia was sitting in front of Rav, and he took off his glasses and he's looking at it. He wants to know if it has a value of pruta. Okay, then she's being engaged. But if not, what is the shmatis? What are these things? And she's not going to be engaged. So the Gemara wonders. What? And if it's not worth a pruta, then that's it. There's no kedushin. But Shmuel. But there's this teaching of Shmuel we just mentioned before that says chashim. We're concerned maybe it's worth a pruta somewhere else. So what are you being ma'ayin? We're going to say we're always going to have that suspicion that that's worth a pruta. So the Gemara says loy kasha. It's like we said before. He's looking in to see if it's definite kedushin. You're right. Of course, we're going to have to be chayshish for the kedushin, but he wanted to know: is it definitive as a kedushin? Another story the Gemara brings: Ahu Gava, there was a certain person, the Akdish Ba'avna de Kuchla. He gave for his kala a black marble that's like similar to bluish, and he gave this stone to his kala. So Yasser Rav Chizda become a Charlie. Rav Chizda was sitting there in the back table, a picnic table out there, he's in the sun, he's looking at this, because what happened was, Rashi explains, was that, as we'll see in a moment, that somebody else came along and he said, that's what you're giving to the girl, I'll give her, I have a nickel in my pocket. And he gave her a pruta, and he gave her a kedushin. So because was sitting, he was looking, is Bishava pruta in? He was like, okay, this boy gave her this bluish, blackish marble. He says, if it has a value of pruta, okay, then they're engaged. If he lie, but if not, not. So the Gemara says, what? And if this piece of marble is not worth a pruta, then there's no problem. But Shmuel said, we are concerned. So the Gemara says, Rav Chizda Rav Chizda didn't hold of this teaching of Shmuel, and therefore, no, if it's not worth a pruta, that's it. There's nothing happened. And if it is, then yeah. But Taisa says, wait a second. Why did the Gemara change from all its answers it just said up until now? Why didn't it say that he does hold of a Shmuel, but that's only Kedushay Safik, and they want to know Kedushay Vadai? Says no, because if you can look at the story, the Gemara continues, the story was that his brother afterwards was the one who did the Kedushin of the Pruta. And Rav Chizda was coming to remove the Kedushin of the first one, as the Gemara is going to shortly say. He said to the mother, you can't make it har forbidden on the second guy. Now, if you're going to say that the first ones were at least a suffix, then you would have to have a get from the first one. Then anyway she would be forbidden to the second brother because of Grushas Achiv. So because of the story, it wasn't possible for the Gemara to say that Rav Chizda held like Shmuel. He just wanted to know it's Kedusha Vadi or not, because as we'll shortly see, the story continues. Where Amr Le Ime, it's actually two different girsayis. Either it's our girsa says that his mother said to Rav Chizda, or some have the girsa Ima, her mother. Wherever it is, one of the mothers gets involved. And she says, what do you mean? Bahu yoyma the kitcha. But that day when he did the Kidushin, when he took out the marble, Havabesh of a pruta. It was worth a pruta. Now it went down the price. So now you're looking at the market value and you're saying, I don't know, black marble, I don't know, so maybe half a pruta or whatever. It's just not going to be a Kidushin, doesn't hold like Shmuel. He's not chalisha for it. I'm sorry, your son's not engaged to this girl. It's like, what do you mean, Rabbi? But when he did it 3 days ago, I know, I checked on the index and it was worth over a pruta. So Amalai says to the mother, Lav kol kaminach. You don't have any ability here to testify that this first man who did the Kidushin, the asrit la abasra, that you're coming to make the girl now forbidden on the second guy, because like Rashi already told us the story was that this first boy gave this marble, and then the boy afterwards gave this pruta. You can't come now and tell me that this was worth a pruta to make the girl forbidden on the second guy who gave her that pruta, as we continue Talmud Beis, because Rav Chizda explains a proof for what he's trying to say is, I'll bring you a precedent. We know in law, they always try to bring a precedent. I'll bring you a precedent that shows what I'm saying. Lav hainu di Yehudis. Isn't this exactly what happened to Yehudis? Who is Yehudis? The base of Reb Chia, the wife of Reb Chia. What happened with her? David Latzar Leida. She had very difficult childbirths. As Rashi tells us from the Gemara in Yevamos of Samachay, she would give birth to twins. She had Yehuda and Chizkiah brothers. She had Pazi and Tavi sisters. It was too difficult for her, this childbirth thing. So Amalei, she said to her husband, Amalei Aim, my mother told me one day, conveniently they're having croissants together. She says, my mother told me, Kibel be avuch, meaning the mother, she was saying over what her mother told her. That the mother was telling her, your father had accepted Kiddushin for you, Kizutris, when you were a young girl. Truth is, Tati had already accepted Kiddushin from another man. That means to say, your husband that you're married to right now is actually forbidden to you. So obviously what she's trying to do, she's trying to get out of this marriage. It's very different. I mean, at least she's not interested in having babies anymore. It's too much. Too much anymore. So she's like, she's saying that her mother said that this is not your real husband. You really... Okay, look. This is let's forward. So this was so Amalah. So the Reb Chia says to his wife, Lav kol kamina di imech, your mother doesn't have the ability, the astrolech elavoy, to make you forbidden on me. So essentially, he was saying the same thing. The mother gets involved, and she's trying to say that this was the first marble was Kidushin because worth a brother. You don't have any say in the matter to weigh in over here and say that it was worth a pruta, and to make now the second one, because if I look at the stone, I don't see it worth a pruta. I'm sorry, your son's not engaged, and the second one is going to be engaged. Right. You need to aid them. Yeah. I mean, there's famous stories of Moshe also that the mother by the chuppah said, you're not believed. And therefore, and he's saying he's bringing a precedent. You see the same thing over here that that your mother's not believed to say that your father accepted Kidushin from someone else. So but the Gemara continues asking. So again, this is the story with Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda was checking to see is it worth a prut or not. So Amru lei Rabban Rav Chizda. The rabbi said to Rav Chizda, wait a second, Amai, but why? Ha'ikar sahadi beidis. And there's different Gersayis here. Rashi, Taisis. Rashi said beidis is the name of a place. And that day, they were over here, but they had gone away. The Eidim. Taisus brings the whole Gersa Ba'Iris, and he's saying it's referring to Eretz Yisrael because it's like Iris is the west, like Uriah, Arka, Avirka, and that's the other story that the Gemara is going to bring regarding Istan, which is the north, which is Bavel, whatever. Taisus has a whole thing. But either way, he's trying to say, but there's witnesses in Idis, the Yadi, that they know about who Yam Hava Beis Shavapruta. They know it's worth a Shavapruta. There's witnesses that were here, that they went away. So forget about the mother. There's witnesses. You're going to just let this second guy be engaged when maybe the first guy's engaged? There's witnesses that were here that went away? So on that, Rav Chizda says, come on. Right now, they're not here in front of us. And he says, I'll bring you precedent in that too. Lav Hainu Reb Chanina? Isn't this with the story of Chanina in the Gemara Ksubis? What happened over there? So there was the daughters of Shmuel that were taken captive. and they were brought to the Beis HaMedrash of Reb Chanina. What they did was, these were very smart girls. Their fathers were a great rabbi. So they kept the captors on the outside, and each one by one, came in and said the phrase, Nishbesi v'torani. Rabbis, I was taken captive, but I'm pure. Nothing happened to me. I wasn't defiled. And then the next girl, and the next girl, and so on and so on. So Reb Chanina permitted them for kahuna, because the halacha is, if she's pesha asa, pesha hitte, if you say, well, okay, we believe you, no, we don't know otherwise that you were taken captive. You said you were taken captive, so then, we'll believe you that you were tar. Then they said to Reb Chanina, they said, but there's witnesses overseas that saw they were taken captive. And the Mishnah teaches, if there's witnesses that were taken captive, and she says, I'm ta'ira, she's not believed, because no pesha asa. You aren't the one who told us this to then tell us otherwise. So he said to them, yeah, but Rabbi say, right now they're not here. They're not testifying regarding their captivity. And therefore, he permitted them, Reb Chanina. He says, yes, these girls are going to be considered as tar. So, because the Amr Reb Chanina says, Eideha b'tzad istan, their witnesses are in the north, which says it refers to Bavel, that's on the north. That's the translation of Matzvaina is Astana. But they're not coming and testifying. And they should be forbidden? So he says, I bring your precedent that even if you know there's witnesses, they're not here. They're not here. That's it. I paskin what I see, and they're going to be mutter. So therefore, here also says Rav Chizda says, don't tell me that witnesses who could tell me that it was worth this marble was worth a pruta, and therefore he should be engaged to. Then the mother's not believed. No witness over here. I'm going to check this. I don't see it's worth a pruta. Yalla, the second guy's going to be engaged. However, Abai v'Rava lo'isfir l'had Rav Chizda. They didn't hold like Rav Chizda to permit this woman because there were witnesses in Edis. There's witnesses, and we know there's witnesses. They're just not here. They don't have a plane to get it there. Therefore, you can permit them. They didn't. But But we had a ride from Chanina. Didn't we have the same story of Chanina? Chanina also permitted them, and even though the witnesses overseas that they were taken captive, he still permitted them. He said no, it's not a raya from there. Why? Because if they were lenient by the laws of a captive woman, a captive woman degrades herself for her captors. So there she's more repulsive. So nekel be'eshes ish, you think we're going to be lenient regarding a married woman? So there's different girsais. Places says that, but one of them is that if we're going to be lenient by a captive woman, that is because even if there are witnesses that she was taken captive, we still wouldn't know if she was defiled. So if that's the case, she's not biblically usher. So you think we're going to be lenient by a married woman where if there was witnesses that stone was worth a Shabbat Pruta, then she's a full-fledged Eishes Ish. So therefore it doesn't make sense that we should be Mekel. That's one of the interpretation places says. So basically it's not a ride from Chanina's halacha. That's different. That's by Shvuya, and that makes sense. That we're going to say over there that will be lenient, but that would not be the case over here. If this is actually worth a pruta and there are witnesses who know that, then this would be a full-fledged Kidushin, and therefore they disagree with Rav Chizda and says, no, we cannot be mater her to the second guy. Now, the Gemara actually tells us that historically, there was some of that family left over in Surah, meaning this woman got married like Rav Chizda's psak to the second guy and had a family from the second guy. The rabbis, they separated, they don't want to marry into that family. Now, it's not because they have like Shmuel that says that you have to be concerned. Well, who cares? It's not even worth a pruta. Shmuel's halacha was, maybe it's worth a pruta madai. So you can't just let a woman off the hook from the guy who gave her this marble, because maybe it's worth somewhere. No, not why the rabbis stayed away. Not because they held like Shmuel. And from the Srilu Kabai Barava, it's because they held like Abai and Rava. Because since there's witnesses in Edis to testify that it was a definite Kedushin, you can't be lenient because they're just not here to testify. And I don't care, you're looking with your loop and you're saying, no, not worth a pruta. Next. No, because there might be witnesses somewhere who we know there's witnesses, and it's because they're not here, that's not a reason, and therefore they felt that that's not a family to marry into. Now the Gemara brings a story, continuing on this theme. Who gave there was a certain person, the Akdish Beshutisa da Asa. He's in the shuk, mamash the shuk, sukkah's time. He takes one stalk of a myrtle. There's a girl over there, and Beshuka, and he takes the girl. He says, "Hared Mekadesh Li," and he takes one of the hadassim from his stand, and he gives it to the girl. So Sholcha Ravacha Bar Huna lekamid Rabbi Yisrael. He said the shayla in front of Rabbi Yisrael. He says, "Kai gavna mai." Says, "What would the halacha be over here?" So Sholcha sent to him. First of all, nagde. You have to give this guy lashes, kirav, because of preetzes, because you don't do a kedushin out there in the street, in the shuk, in the marketplace. And the itzrich gita, we require a get if she's going to try to get married to someone else. Kishmul. Kishmul said, we're concerned that maybe it's worth a prut to a mother. I mean, obviously it's not sukkah's time because then it's worth a hainurav. But whatever it is, maybe it's going to be worth a pruta in Madai. So although it's just a myrtle branch, which, if it wasn't for sukkahs, no one would pay whatever it's worth. You go, anyone walk by the lake and then start cutting off those other types of branches, and that's not worth anything. But maybe in Madai it's worth something. Because, as the Gemara explains, for the first part of this teaching that you have to give lashes, the Rav Mangid, Rav would give lashes for a few different things. One was al the Mekadesh B'Shukah. The guy in the street, everyone today is posting all those things that they're doing. So the guy, Mamish, is having one of these things where everyone's participating in the street, and these guys making this whole ceremony with the ring. Rav would get lashes, a pritzes, a breach. This is something of intimacy. They don't do this out in public. So we give malchus for that. About the Mekadesh B'Biyah, if the guy decides, okay. And he would do biyah, give lashes for that too. And about the Mekadesh B'Lo Shaduchi, if someone does Kidushin without making the match, meaning we make a shidduch is essentially really what our engagement is really shaduchi, which we say, okay, they make up to get engaged. So that's like appropriate versus just doing the act of Kidushin. It's a preetzes. It's a breach, because you have to understand the whole point of Kidushin really is a sanctification, a consecration of the most base desire that a man has. We're elevating it to a sanctimonious level. So if someone would do it in these loopholes, he would give lashes. Another case would be if, let's say, someone sent a get to his wife, and he runs after the shliach, and he tells him, the get that I gave you is null and void. Now, the problem with that, and why he would give lashes to someone who is mevatel get, was because that maybe people are not going to know that he was mevatel before the get came to her hand, and maybe the shliach is going to give it to her even after he was mevatel, because it's like, I don't know, I'm doing my agency, I don't care, and then she's going to get married with it. So therefore, that's the way Rashi explains it, that he would give lashes for a person that was mevatel the get, and valdemasa maidah gita. If he makes a proclamation against the get, meaning, for example, like what's called a get ma'usa, when the Jewish people force someone to write a get, which they have the authority to, the guy says, oh, I was forced, and whatever, and he's saying, I didn't really want to, which he's being maitzilaz on her children, so therefore he would give lashes for that. And if someone pained the agent, the messenger of the rabbis, meaning when they do hazmana, and this guy is coming from the judges, from the rabbanim, and this guy gets up and he slaps him, he says, get out of my house, he pushes him down the steps. Such a guy who is mitzar, the shluch of the rabbanim we give lashes to. And someone that already had shamta, an excommunication for 30 days, and the guy didn't do anything about it, we give lashes to such a guy too. And on the son-in-law who lived by his mother-in-law. What's the problem? Why do you give lashes over there? Because he might stumble with her. Because generally the mother-in-law loves her son-in-law. I don't know. That's what the Gemara says in Pesachim Daf Kuf Yud Gimel. That said, be careful with your wife from your first son-in-law, from her first son-in-law, because she feels close to him, and therefore you have to be careful with your wife and that first son-in-law. And therefore, Rav would give lashes if he's living by his mother-in-law because of, inappropriateness. Says the Gemara, what? The dyer in only if he lives by his mother-in-law, but if he's passing by, that wouldn't be a problem. But there was a certain son-in-law, the chalaf above the bechamu, he just passed by the doorway of his mother-in-law. But he should give him lashes, give him klep for just passing by. Says the Gemara, no, that story was different because Meidim Havas Daima Chamse Minei. There was a suspicion already ongoing with that son-in-law and that mother-in-law, and therefore, people are suspecting you. You don't be passing by, so they would give malchus. But usually, it's only a problem if you live by the mother-in-law. Which one? No. I'm saying you have to. Here's two halachas. One is we require a get because maybe it's like Shmuel's halacha. I mean, like Shmuel's halacha. Maybe it's worth a madai something. So we have to suspect that it's a kedushin. We have to be chesheshes, and therefore give him lashes for doing a kedushin in the shuk, which is inappropriate. You want to know if he did a ma'aser kedushin and it wasn't a real kedushin? What would be the halacha? I'm saying, but we're in chayshish for it anyway. Yeah, we're requiring a get because we're chayshish that maybe it's worth a pruta like Shmuel's halacha. Maybe you're asking a good shayla. What would be if, let's say, the guy did a ma'aser kedushin, but it wasn't a kinyan of kedushin? Would we still give lashes? Is the ma'aser pirza the etzem halacha, or is the pirza the act of doing it? But upon him, so the Gemara says that the Gemara concludes and says in Nardai Amri they said b'kulu lo'man gedrav, that actually all these things we just mentioned, it's not true. Rav would not give lashes for. And actually, Taisus says this is what we rely on the Adims, the son-in-laws, in these times that they live by the in-laws, because ultimately the Gemara comes out that he would not give lashes for all these other things. And even for someone who is concerned, as we mentioned before, that the newly married couple lives by the in-laws, that's because of Tevis Hana. It's just simply because rent-free living by the in-laws, where obviously he's not living there because he wants to be close to his mother-in-law. Sometimes it's the opposite, but it's because of all the other benefits. They have free Costco, they have everything. They could use everything, take everything by the in-laws. So therefore, that's where they're there. But nothing to do that he just wants to be close to his mother-in-law. So he says that's what people rely on Bizman Hazeh to live by their in-laws. So Rav would not give lash on all these things. Ella al only on the Mekadesh Bebiyah, only where there was a kedushin with bia, below shaduchi, without shaduchi. Some say no, v'fila b'shaduchi nami. Even if there was shaduchim, if the kedushin was with a bia, he would give lashes mishum pritzusa because of pritzas, which the Taisa brings from the Ri that he likes that pshat, that the pirza is that you don't make your first kinyan with bia. It's similar to Mekadesh without shaduchim. It's like it's don't jump in. Let the first thing be the bia. Yes, it's a kinyan, but it's not the most appropriate one, and therefore that would not be appropriate. And therefore, he gave lash for that. Okay, thank you, Turn anytime posting us.